Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In this last episode of our series about the Charedim living in Israel, we are going to talk about the economics of the Charedim, how they are able to fund themselves in this Torah learning community. When it comes to economics, they have a completely different way of looking at the world. Time we were eating lunch in the office and we were talking about number of kids, and a secular friend of mine said, if I had a lot of money, I would have a lot of kids. I love kids. So I said to him, how many kids would you want? So he said, 3. Now, in the Charedi community, the average number of kids is 7. And the secular world look at this and they are completely blown away how they're able to support themselves and to have so many kids and also buy them apartments. We'll get to that later in the episode. And in this episode, we're going to dive into their economics, how they're able to do this. If you want to learn more about the background and way of life of the Charedi community, in the first episode of the series, we talk more about their background. But in general, like we said, they have an average of 7 per family, and men have a pretty low work rate. About 51% of the men work compared to 86% in the general Israeli population of men. Now, women actually do work at a similar proportion to the rest of the population, but even though men and the women who do work, on average, their salaries are a much lower rate than the rest of the population. And in general, 51% of Charedim are below the poverty line. And this is a measure generally divided by income per person in the family. So because they have lower income and more children, so most of them are below the poverty line. So how are they able to survive financially? So there's a few ways that they live that helps them provide for their family. So the first thing is they get about 850 shekels per month as a stipend from the state. Stipend that they get from the state does cause some resentment. We'll get to that more in the rest of the episode. The second way they make money is they get about 1,000 or 2,000 shekels from the kollel, from the yeshiva in which they're full-time learners. This money is provided by the yeshiva, usually from donations that the yeshiva gets. Another way they make money is they have small jobs on the side. This could mean that they teach a bar mitzvah boy, they write Torah books, they do different things on the side that can make up to about a few hundred shekels or about 1,000 per month. The next thing is extremely important in the Charedi community, and that is frugality. The Charedi community strongly emphasize, living simply and not living an extravagant life. A frugal life is very much emphasized in the Charedi community. This could mean that many of them don't have cars, they don't go to hotels or vacations. If they do want to go on vacation in the summer, they usually do. They switch homes with relatives that they know in a different location. They switch homes. They don't have a lot of chugim, which means extracurricular activity for their kids. Whatever they do, they live very, very simply. And the leaders of the Charedi community are also extremely known for their frugality. Rav Steinman, who passed away in 2017 at the age of 103, was known to live in a very simple apartment, like a 1-bedroom apartment in Bnei Brak, very, very simply. And this is something that is very much emphasized in the Charedi community, living simply and frugally. Of course, there is a middle class in the Charedi community. They go out to restaurants. They do have mehadrin, kosher vacations, but this is a minority. Mostly are very much dedicated to Torah learning, and that so that father can learn. We live very, very simply and even in poverty. So Torah is the highest priority, even if this means living in poverty. All this is so that the father can learn Torah and that the kids in the future can build Torah homes themselves. Also, very common in the Charedi community is to have communal purchases. This could mean, we as a community, we buy vegetables together at very discounted prices. We buy school supplies together. And this purchasing power really helps them to get very, very cheap supplies for their households. Also, the Charedi community has a lot of tzedakah, a lot of charity. They are very known to giving each other. 74% of Charedi households donate regularly, as opposed to 26% of the regular population. And also the money that they do donate is higher than the other population. They donate about 500 shekels compared to 200 shekels that most families in the rest of the population give. So this is a very strong community, and they help each other in time of needs, and especially those who are even less fortunate than they are. They have something called a gemach, which means like a lending library, and they have a gemach for anything you can think of. There's gowns for brides. There's, if you have a simcha, if you have a party, you can lend plastic chairs and medicine and electrical appliances. Really, there's a gemach for everything, completely free and led by volunteers. The next one is loans without interest. Now, when seculars hear how they are able to buy their children homes, Israel is known to have a very tough housing market. It's really, really not easy to buy a house, and especially with a lot of kids. Now, how do they do this? Basically, the way the dating world works in the Charedi community, the desired boy is someone who learns full-time in yeshiva, wants to have a Torah home where he's dedicated to Torah. The girl who is the bride, her family is expected to help with a down payment on an apartment, or those who are very wealthy and they can get even a stronger learner is they can supply even more than the down payment, which means half an apartment or a whole apartment. Those are very wealthy families. But it is expected for the girl to bring a certain large sum to buy a house, and that's that's what they do in the Charedi community. The couple that gets married, they have at least a down payment to buy an apartment. Now, how are they able to fund this? They have something called community loans. It's a very big mitzvah to give someone a loan without interest, someone in need. So they have these large loans that they're able to take at low or no interest rates. And for example, in the Hasidic community of Belz, anyone who's marrying off a kid gets 150,000 shekels. This helps them provide, but you can see that anyone who is marrying off kids, especially daughters, it's a very tough time, and economically it's a very, very big strain on them. But do they feel poor? So this is actually very, very interesting. In a survey, when asked, how pleased are you with your current economic situation, 76% of Charedi men said they are very pleased with their financial situation, compared to 60% in the general population. And maybe this is because, how you stand financially, how you're doing financially is a lot about the environment you live in. And if you live in an environment that everyone is doing the same thing, using the gemachs, using tzedakah, that's the system, then that's who you are comparing yourself to. They feel that they're living a spiritual, meaningful life, and they don't look at the outside, secular world as something that they're jealous of or want, but rather more like a world of vanity that they have nothing to do with. In the second episode, we spoke about the security burden. The chareidim generally do not do the army, but the tougher one is really the economic burden. A low percentage of Charedi men work, and even those who do work, work in low-paying jobs. So when it comes to payment of taxes versus receiving from the state, they are generally on the taking side, and this can cause a lot of resentment towards them. In the general population, 50% pay more taxes than services that they receive in return, and 50% the opposite. In the Charedi population, 90% take more than they give, and only 10% give more than they take. This is still a small group within the country. We can still contain it, but as this population who has the highest growth rate, as they continue to grow, this is something that is causing more and more resentment within people. taxes in Israel are very high, and this causes a lot of resentment. Inside the Charedi community, there's a little bit of a poverty trap. Now, what happens is studying Torah is the norm, is something that is the most desired. Even those who do want to provide for their families and start working, they are at an extreme disadvantage. This usually happens later in life. At age 24, they're exempt from the army. So at age 24, when they're married with kids and no secular education, which we spoke about in the previous episode of the series, so they are at a very strong disadvantage. And even those who do work will work in low-paying jobs that don't require an education. So a lot of times it actually doesn't really make sense for them to begin working. Because they're receiving subsidies from the state and from their community, and the job that they would require is low wages, a lot of times it doesn't make sense for them to go out and work, especially at the price, where your community doesn't see it in the best light. Basically, when we look at the numbers, his current situation, he has 7,500 shekels from his wife's salary. The state provides him 850 shekels per month as a stipend. He gets about 1,500 shekels from his yeshiva, and he gets certain discounts, certain economic level. You get subsidies from the state in daycare services and in Arnona, paying for your apartment rental. Leaving the Torah world, he'll lose all of these subsidies, and his average salary is about 8,000 shekels, lower than the general population because he doesn't have a proper education. So when he looks at the numbers, the difference going to work is about 3,000 shekels. Now, 3,000 shekels a month is a lot of money to provide for your family, but it's still not that much. And at a lot of times it also comes at a social price. So when he looks at the numbers, 3,000 shekels for leaving the Torah world, working in pretty tough jobs. A lot of times it's low wage jobs that are also very, very difficult and long hours. And his community looks at him in a bad light. Also, going out to work means a lot of influence from the outside world. The Charedi community is very sheltered and isn't so, keen on mingling. So if we do want the Haredim to take more of a part in the economic burden, what we have to do is twofold. On one hand, we have to improve their wages, give them better education to make sure that the jobs they have are better paid, and at the same time to lower subsidies that they're receiving. You have to make sure that these subsidies are not causing them not to join the workforce, which is something that we as an economy really, really need. So if we want to help them to get better wages, we have to provide them with schools and education system to help them in their professional life. Like we said, a lot of times this is someone who's already 24, has small children that he needs to provide for. So it's really, really difficult to fill in the gaps of the secular education, and also, they live in a sheltered world. They don't speak English. There are wonderful organizations to help them study or to become professionals. Especially a lot of people are trying to help them join the high-tech world. Why does high-tech sound like a good idea? Well, first of all, high-tech offers higher salaries. 10% of the workforce in Israel work in high-tech, and only 1% of the high-tech workers are chareidim. It's not easy to get in, especially when you have so many knowledge gaps in different things. And sometimes the chareidim look for, shortcuts and try to have shortened courses to get into things. And sometimes there's no choice but to take an intense course, an intense program for a longer period of time if you want to do well in the workforce. Some companies see the potential within this population and they build offices within their communities that have a set environment for Charedis. For example, in Ashdod, there is a big center for Charedi women who work in sales. These companies usually offer lower wages than in other places, but at the same time, this helps them feel safe and they're within their community and their own setup. So there is a long way to go, and there's a lot of effort being made to help those who do want to work to find better jobs and to get better wages and to have better professions. It's a mutual interest for us to help people provide for their families and to make sure that our economy remains a strong economy, a westernized economy that we are so proud of. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. See you next time.